Hey, this one's a little bit personal insofar as it relates to Northern Ireland. And, Northern Ireland's a small place, so being from there, whenever I talk about Northern Ireland, it's personal. But I have to say, I was never really on the front line of the Troubles in the way that others were. Um, I grew up in North Belfast, near Belfast Castle, if you know Belfast. It was an area that was relatively trouble-free. I mean, it wasn't particularly sectarian. It wasn't like the Falls Road or the Shankill or somewhere like that. It was a decent area. And my childhood, I don't remember as being particularly violent or, seeing much of the troubles. But certainly, I have recollections of things that wouldn't be normal on the mainland. Things like armored police vehicles and soldiers patrolling the streets, that sort of thing. I saw the aftermath of the Omagh bombing. I mean, the rubble that is. 'Cause my godparents are from Omagh. But I can't say that I was directly in the troubles other than being from Northern Ireland whilst they were going on. Um, Nevertheless, it never ceases to, if you're from Ulster, you can't not think about it. With the recent trouble, the recent riots, it's unfortunately bringing back some of the imagery of that era. Now, I made a video on that. Um, I just want to reiterate from the outset, I don't think there'll be a return of the Troubles. I really can't see a conflict in that way with entire communities. I mean, like the whole province in flames. I don't see that happening in the same way. Nevertheless, the recent scenes have been disturbing and depressing. I've just watched an episode of The Crown, which is now up to 1979, of course, eventful year. Uh, the election of Thatcher, of course, and the assassination of Lord Mountbatten. Now, that was one of the darkest days for the British in the Troubles because on the same day, I believe it was the same day, 18 British soldiers were killed at Warren Point in one of the worst single acts against the British Army. And Lord Mountbatten, of course, was killed on his fishing boat, lobster fishing. The Crown, depicted this naturally in a very tense and dramatic way. And for anyone who knows the history, you know what's coming. Apparently, it was initially going to be a sniper attack, but there was poor visibility, so an IRA operative put the controlled device under the fishing boat. But for those who justify his death, um, two young boys were also killed in that incident. One of them was a young crewmate from Enniskillen, and his grandson was also killed, as was Doreen Dozier, the Brayborn. She died from her injuries, and the other people on board, Lady Brayborn and Lord Brayborn, his daughter and son-in-law, were badly injured. It was worldwide condemnation, including from George Colley, the 10th of the Republic of Ireland, President Jimmy Carter, Pope John Paul II. Um, I mean, this was the man who was the last Viceroy of India, cousin of the Queen, a senior member of the British royal family, murdered in in that sort of way. It was shocking. But like I say, the same day, 18 soldiers killed at one point. Now, I've just watched a video, um, and it was, I don't know what year it was from, I'm guessing a couple of years ago, and it was a former British Army soldier and a former IRA prisoner, and they met in Belfast and spoke about, well, what was interesting was the British guy made a interesting point. He spoke about this immunity from prosecution that is being proposed for soldiers, but that really has to mean immunity across the board. And this is one of the hardest things about Northern Ireland, and I would say also conflicts around the world. I mean, I've studied armed conflict for years, and I have an interest in journalism. And one thing that is almost true of every conflict is the reconciliation part that comes afterwards is almost harder. If you take, for example, the Guatemala Civil War, which was far, far deadlier than what happened in Northern Ireland, many thousands disappeared there. Um, if you look at a lot of other conflicts in Latin America, um, the reconciliation aspect, and even more true in the Middle East, it's a very, very difficult thing because how can there be forgiveness and reconciliation without justice? You know, if you had family members or friends killed in a terrorist atrocity, or by, the case of Bloody Sunday victims, by the British Army, then, if there's no justice, how do you move on? It's a very difficult thing. And I think Tony Blair and John Hume and others made a very, very difficult decision when the Good Friday Agreement was drafted. They understood that it would be controversial, but it did prove to have peace insofar as the main paramilitaries did lay down their arms. Of course, there was a dissident splinter Real IRA campaign that continued afterwards and still continues, albeit on a low level scale. But um, there's a lot of grey areas when it comes to Northern Ireland. I think that for me, I'm 35, and seeing the kids rioting in Belfast now, they were born after the Good Friday Agreement. They weren't directly involved in the Troubles, yet they are now, throwing Molotov cocktails at the police, and it's depressing to see. I've heard people sort of explain the sociology of this. There's no opportunities, it's unemployment, etc. But you get that across the United Kingdom. There's parts of Wales and northwest England, indeed northeast England, indeed across the country where there's youth unemployment and disillusion. Um, so I don't think that alone addresses it. Um, Recently, the PSNI has actually now denied that loyalist paramilitaries were involved in stirring up these sentiments. I think there was a range of factors, but I really hope that it doesn't escalate. I hope this was just an ugly period that's going to now calm down because trashing your own community like that, it's true in any situation. It's a bit like in the States when you have, I mean, Minneapolis is once again seeing riots over yet another situation of a black man being killed and questions over the exact circumstances and all the rest of it. Um, but there has to be an exploration as to why, there's teenagers in Ulster that are so quick to resort to rioting. That needs to be understood. But, I kind of have mixed feelings about Northern Ireland. I don't want to get into the complex issues around Brexit and borders and all that sort of thing. I'm just thinking here in a sort of sentimental perspective. I've mixed feelings because on one hand, I don't see a return to the main troubles, so that's a good thing. I don't see that happening. On the other hand, you look at any videos to do with Northern Ireland, like for example, news archives on various attacks throughout the troubles, and you see some really vitriolic comments even today. So where's the reconciliation there? Where's when I see people saying things like, the Brits got what they deserved, free Ireland, up their rah, and you get it on the other side from loyalists. What are they contributing to this? I mean, I won't beat around the bush. I think people who glorify the IRA and the INLA are reprehensible because when they talk about freedom fighters, they're ignoring the fact that many of the victims were not soldiers. They were ordinary civilians, including Catholic citizens who ostensibly the IRA were fighting for because of issues around civil rights and so on in the late 60s. But when I see people sort of glorify them as freedom fighters, it sickens me to the core because those freedom fighters ruthlessly murdered men, women, and children, maimed many more. And yes, the loyalists done that as well, but I would argue that the Republican paramilitaries are far more glorified and romanticized, certainly internationally. I mean, you get people coming in from all over the world, other conflict zones generally, and saying, "Oh, we support Ireland in its fight for freedom." Um, the important thing to understand is the Irish government, whilst it's had disagreements with London over status of Northern Ireland, the Irish government, consecutive Irish governments, have always condemned paramilitary violence to their credit because they understood that that would never achieve a united Ireland. Um, so when I see people glorify the Republican paramilitaries, that sort of thing will not create peace in Northern Ireland. Um, Certainly won't help reconciliation. Um, and it depresses me, and I wasn't even, like I say, my family never really suffered directly in the Troubles, not compared to some people. But it depresses me seeing that stuff. It makes me angry. Also depresses me because it's this. I mean, there's a depraved mentality about these people. When Captain Tom died recently, they were already jumping in. There was some individuals waving the Irish flag and so on, and there's a vitriolic mentality about that, which I've no respect for, and I think it's disgusting. So I very much take the position that there needs to be consistency. So if no, if under the terms of the Good Friday Agreement, then there won't be any further prosecutions, or if there's to be immunity, then it should be immunity for all. But then that's a difficult thing, isn't it? Because people who lost loved ones, where's their justice? So it needs to be one way or the other. You can't have it like, for example, one of the issues with prosecuting the soldiers involved in Bloody Sunday, they're now all old men in their 60s and 70s. But if you prosecute them, then you'd have to open up, you know, hundreds and hundreds of cases prosecuting IRA members, which of course they would fiercely oppose. So you can't have it both ways. You can't demand that the soldiers responsible for Bloody Sunday are prosecuted, but then not accept that IRA killers should be prosecuted as well. And incidentally, the Troubles did not begin in 1972. People talk about Bloody Sunday as if it was the starting point. It wasn't. One of the many ways this conflict has been spun. Um, I come from an Ulster Unionist background, but I don't see myself as particularly hard line. I'm certainly not, a blood and soil unionist in that sense. I've got Irish friends. I respect Irish culture. Um, and actually, the mindset of some ultra unionists is very alien to me in terms of there is a certain far right connection with some of those groups. I'm not talking about everyone here. I'm talking about, there's unquestionably links between some of the far right groups on the mainland and also unionists. And that's totally alien to me. I am British and I've grown up the United Kingdom's my country, and absolutely nobody, whether they be Irish or English, can tell me how I should see myself. That's something I put my foot down with. Anyone that tries doing that, I'll quickly shut them up because you have no right to tell someone else how they should feel about their identity. Um, so I do have strong views about that. But when it comes to Northern Ireland, um, these scenes are very sad. Um, I'm just going to say it may well be that in my lifetime, maybe in the next few decades, there will be a united Ireland because the demographics have changed. When I was born in 1985, the ratio was majority Protestant Unionist. Now it's probably more like 50-50. Um, but I think for the most part, Republicans realise that they won't achieve a united Ireland by the bomb and the bullet. I think they realised that in 1998, except for the renegade factions. But, you know, that will very possibly happen because of the demographic shift. And the Unionists will inevitably not go down without a fight. But I just hope that means vocal rather than violent. Um, One thing I will close with is this. I don't see myself as sectarian, but I would say that you cannot treat that unionist community as if they arrived yesterday, as if they don't have very deeply held convictions. I mean, in Northern Ireland, the 36th Ulster Division, the Belfast Blitz, these are things that are felt very, very deeply. So neither the Irish Republicans or Dublin or the mainland for that matter, the English, the Scottish, the Welsh, nobody should underestimate how deeply held the convictions of Ulster Unionists are. Now, I'm not saying that people should just pander to their demands if that is in the form of violence, but they can't be taken for granted. They can't just be dismissed. So if there is a united Ireland in the future, which, like I say, is possible, the unionist minority will need to be respected. They will need to be assured that their rights are respected. And it isn't just a reversal whereby, like in the late 60s, Catholics were discriminated against. It can't be a situation where if a united Ireland happens, then unionists are kind of, well, probably not discriminated against, but treated with contempt or treated in a marginalized way. I think that there needs to be an understanding that they do have a unique identity and it will never go. Those people will never drop that. I know how deeply felt that is. Um, and I understand that. It's not something that I mean, I've grown up in England. I don't, I don't get that hardline loyalist thing in Northern Ireland anymore because I haven't grown up there. I'm 35. I've spent more than half my life in England, so that is somewhat alien to me. But I don't think it should be something that's easily dismissed. Now, because of my accent and because I'm talking about the subject, there will be people that come into this video and think they can judge me or whatever. That's just a risk I'll have to take. But all I'm doing here is speaking with my reflections on the situation. Um, I'm not telling anyone else they have to agree with me. I'm saying that if a United Ireland happens, then there has to be respect for the union's community. I'm not saying give them everything they want. I'm saying that they need to be assured that they'll be treated just in a civil way. But for their part, they also have to understand that violence will not be the answer to anything. Just as the Republican side did not get what they wanted by bombs and bullets, unionists can't assume that's the answer either. I mean, I strongly, strongly believe that London and Dublin need to have very good relations. We're neighbours. The Irish are our neighbours, and I want good relations, especially post Brexit. So it's extremely important. But no one can question my British identity. It's just not even something that I don't need to answer to anyone. It's something I feel in my bones. It's just there, and a lot of other Ulster people feel that way. But that's my reflections. I just hope things don't escalate, and I hope if United Ireland happens, I hope it's done peacefully. For watching.